Picture it. It's a cool Thursday evening in the late 19th century. We're walking right up to the glowing windows of this incredibly grand residence at 888 Massachusetts Avenue in Boston. Inside, 60 of the city's absolute most elite guests are mingling, laughing, and just having the time of their lives. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the totally fascinating, beautifully contradictory, and honestly, utterly captivating life of Dr. Helen G. F. Mack. So, stepping into that room, you immediately notice the air is thick with the heavy, sweet scent of lilies. And over the hum of the crowd, you hear this sharp, rhythmic trill. It's Ella Chamberlain, who is, and I absolutely love this, a professional whistler. The whole evening was hailed by high society as a rare musical treat. But here's the thing, at the absolute center of this social triumph, orchestrating the entire glamorous affair, stood Helen. She wasn't just hosting a party, she was literally the center of gravity in that room.
Okay, let's dive into this, because her double life is just unbelievable. Gynecology by day, soprano solos by night. Think about that for a second. She was a serious medical professional who would dissect the intricacies of human anatomy and medicine in the morning, and then, effortlessly pivot to performing a flawless soprano solo for elite musical critics right after sundown. Back in the Gilded Age, women were largely expected to just be quiet ornaments. But Helen? She completely shattered that mold.
Section 1. Defying the Gilded Age.
To really grasp how she became this unstoppable force in the Back Bay elite, we kind of have to track her radical ambition right from the start. She was born in 1863, way out in the absolute rural silence of Normanby, Ontario, to her parents William Mack and Eleanor Duth. But, as you might guess, she didn't stay quiet for long. At just 18 years old, she makes her first major strategic play on the chessboard of her life. She marries Thomas Jefferson Loud and heads straight for the bright lights of Boston. And she didn't stop there. By 1895, she's securing her MD, officially graduating from the Boston University School of Medicine.
You have to remember, while other women of her social station were strictly expected to just manage households, Helen was out there rigorously managing a medical career. She actually set up practices in some incredibly prestigious locations, like the Copley and the Seymour. And her schedule? Grueling office hours from 2 p.m. all the way to 9 p.m. She even became an active affiliate of the Massachusetts Homeopathic Medical Society. She was basically cementing herself as a very serious woman of science in a society that, frankly, drastically preferred women to just stay out of the professional sphere altogether.
Which brings us to Section 2. 9 lives, 9 marriages.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer volume we're looking at here. 9. If her career was a straight, steady line upwards, her personal life was just all over the map. Helen didn't merely marry once or even twice. No, she navigated a staggering series of 9 different alliances. And these definitely weren't just any marriages. They spanned the entire spectrum of American power, wealth, and, quite honestly, eccentricity.
But hold on, because it gets so much wilder. 24. Now, you might be thinking 24 years, 24 months, maybe 24 days. Nope. Her most famous marriage lasted exactly 24 minutes. Literally, 24 minutes. She walked down the aisle, said her vows, and then basically turned right around and left, almost the second the words were spoken. I mean, no way, right?
So who was the groom in this 24-minute union? It was none other than Washington Irving Bishop, who was this incredibly famous 19th century thought reader and mentalist. Now, whether her sudden departure was a moment of sudden clarity or just this brilliant strategic retreat, we really don't know for sure. But here's the kicker. Shortly after their blink-and-you-miss-it union, Bishop actually suffered a sudden, highly publicized death. And this bizarre tragedy thrust Helen directly into a massive national spotlight. And, as you might guess knowing her, it was a spotlight she was perfectly comfortable occupying.
But Bishop was really just one chapter in this saga. Her other husbands included a shoe manufacturer in Haverhill, a railroad official down in Baltimore, and Commodore Charles A. Welch. She essentially collected these eclectic, powerful men. And it wasn't random. Each union served a very specific purpose. They strategically added to her autonomy, built up her personal treasury, and ultimately really cemented her independent wealth. Like a master puzzle solver, she was playing a very long, very smart game.
All right, moving into Section 3, the final passage.
And this brilliantly illustrates her ultimate triumph. Just look at the yellow brick mansion at 270 Jerusalem Road in Cohasset. We are talking about 8,000 square feet of absolute independent means, completely supported by 2 live-in staff members. By this point, she was no longer just the ambitious doctor from Cambridge, right? She was the undisputed matriarch of her own domain, living exactly the way she pleased.
Eventually, though, Helen sought out the warmth of the Florida sun for her final retreat. She settled into a bungalow at 909 Palmetto Street in Titusville, just living this quiet family life with her sister Wilhelmina and her daughter Helen Georgina Bishop. And it was right here, at exactly 3:30 a.m. on February 27, 1932, that the long-running, spectacular play of her life finally reached its curtain call. And the news of her passing, it was such a big deal that it made headlines both locally in the Titusville Star-Advocate and all the way back up north in the Cohasset Sentinel.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Her dignified final journey back home was honestly like a grand procession. Her remains were embalmed in Florida, taken to the Titusville station, and then carried north one last time on the Florida East Coast Railway. Finally, she was laid to rest in Woodlawn Cemetery in Massachusetts. She returned right back to the very soil where she had built her magnificent name.
Dr. Helen Mack left behind 8,000 square feet of yellow brick and a legacy that, honestly, simply cannot be boxed in, which leaves us with a real question to ponder. How will history define you if you refuse to be just one thing? In a highly patriarchal Gilded Age society, Helen chose to be a doctor, a socialite, a soprano, and a total mastermind of her own fate. She chose to be everything all at once. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll leave you to think on that.